Well, thank you, David. Thank you, Kelly. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of share with you is a little bit about who I am. I'm Sally Pardue. I teach mechanical engineering at Tennessee Tech University. And Tennessee Tech University is located in a set of counties, and you'll see a map here in part of the presentation to give you a sense of where we are in Tennessee. But Tennessee has many rural regions, as many of our states do throughout the U.S. And what we often find is that even amidst the rural setting, there's usually one county or a community that's kind of a hub for the region. So it might be where, for instance, in our case, a university is located in a town, and there is a different set of resources that come into play, but yet you drive 20 minutes and we're full rural again. So I think part of knowing that regional context and history of your own locale kind of helps you leverage the resources. And so what I'm going to give you an example of today is how the STEMmobile is one solution that is working here in the Upper Cumberland. And to give you a little bit of history about it, to kind of tie it into the context of, you saw David put a short map of Tennessee, was up for a few minutes ago, that showed the hubs across the Tennessee STEM Innovation Network. And the Upper Cumberland was one of those little stars, but then we represent a whole region, about 7,500 square miles, 20 school districts, and our school districts here in Tennessee are arranged around the county line structure. So we're talking about, again, 7,500 square miles, 20 school districts. The idea of everybody coming to one location to have a STEM experience, for instance, visiting the university, it just doesn't make sense, because putting kids on a school bus for an hour and a half doesn't really translate well. So as I kind of take you through the next series of slides, I'm going to be talking about the STEMmobile, but I'm going to keep using some of the language that Heidi mentioned in her opening, which is the ecosystem, thinking about the whole infrastructure of not just education, but about the workforce development. Every county, every municipality, whether it's rural or urban, usually has a chamber of commerce associated with it. And how are we connected to the workforce needs to kind of understand what can be leveraged from their work, their enterprise in the K-12 classroom. One of the things about the Upper Cumberland Rural STEM Initiative, and I seem to not be having slide control, thank you, there we go, is that, again, we're partnered at a university, but we really represent a whole region. And so our work together over the last 4 years, started in 2012, was really driven by this challenge that we posed to ourselves. How do we design ways to support learning in the Upper Cumberland part of Tennessee as an example, perhaps for the nation, of sustainable rural STEM education? And as anything goes, we always start with the people. We should start with the people. We are often very curious about the money numbers as well, and I'll share some of that information with you. But I did want to give you a sense of the impact that the UCRSI, Upper Cumberland Rural STEM Initiative, has had to this point. We've worked with more than 10,000 regional Tennessee students in grades pre-K through 8. And that number grows daily, obviously. But the design comes from this kind of hub infrastructure that is key to the innovation network that started in Ohio and was translated to Tennessee's implementation. And so here in the Upper Cumberland, what we did as a hub was to build direct partnerships with 20 school systems, 20 directors of schools, 20 supervisors of instruction. We intentionally asked each one of those counties to identify a rural, truly rural school, not the school that's in the county seat, but maybe the school that's out at the fringe of the county. Pick up that rural school and meet with the principal and have the principal identify 2 of the innovators in his or her school. And so we identified 40 hub teachers, 20 hub principals, 20 supervisors of instruction, 20 directors of schools. That's the only way any of this works, is to build that network of people. And then at the same time, we had a platform school at the center of it all, which is here in Putnam County in the city of Cookeville. We had a Prescott South Elementary and Middle School identified by the county to say, let's make this the STEM school. Let's flip an existing school. They did happen to be moving into a new building, but it was an existing school population, and let's make it pre-K-8. So that's why we had the 2 principals. One side was pre-K through 4, the other side was 5 through 8. To make all this happen, we identified a partnership team on the university campus, and then further we connected out with 15 plus partners throughout the Upper Cumberland, one of which I would challenge any of us to always remember is your public broadcasting system. You know, think about people you don't normally think about connecting with. So as anything goes, though, it is nice to know how the numbers kind of play out. So sometimes it just takes a little bit of seed money to get an idea rolling. So what happened for the Tennessee STEM Innovation Network through the Upper Cumberland implementation, we had about $500,000 allocated to us for 2 years. Of that $500,000, we spent about $80,000 to do this thing called the STEMmobile. Out of that set of funds, we partnered that $80,000 with a $100,000 gift that we got from the Tennessee legislative body, and a further $250,000 gift that we actually received from Tennessee Tech directly. So the STEMmobile story that I'm about to tell you is roughly about $400,000 to get the STEMmobile up and running. And then from the get-go, to think about what happens when the grant funding's gone and there's not the ability to fund this initiative anymore, we asked our partners to think about going ahead and stepping up and meeting half of the routing costs for the STEMmobile. So that meant for a school to host the STEMmobile for a week at a time. The cost was priced out to about $2,000 a week. It lives at the school for 24/7. They can use it around the clock if they want. But we asked them to put up half the money so that they knew from day one that that would be part of the sustainable process. When we look at the STEMmobile as a technology solution, we have to think about how are people going to use it. So we created a series of STEM education modules in partnership with those 40 teachers that I mentioned, those hub teachers, as well as the platform teachers. And we created modules that were place-based. When we think about Tennessee and we recognize its rural history, agricultural is still very much a part of the dialogue of many students as they grow up in rural areas. So we decided to create a module that we could leverage existing resources already in the education world. So Michigan Model for Health, some of you might be familiar with some of the wonderful resources that have come out of that program. We came up with the idea of let's do something called food body health. So if you think about what young students are learning, and we've got this picture of every kid loves to play doctor or nurse at some point in their life. And we think about the connecting all of that knowledge of where does the food come from, how does it impact our body, how does that impact our health as we grow. So that's an example of one of the modules that we came up with. And then we implemented with Tennessee Tech support, we went and took the technology route and said, okay, if we're talking about distributing accessible resources, let's figure out how we can do so. So we made iPad apps, and we worked with teachers to create legacy cycles, and that's a technique of project-based learning that I would be happy to have you learn more about. You can find out about it in the paper that's mentioned at the references section at the end of the presentation. The legacy cycle starts with a challenge, and then it invites us to know multiple perspectives, to do a generation of ideas, to do research and revise, to constantly test our mettle through formative assessment. And then the big idea is that you always tell a story at the end of it, so you have a go public opportunity. So anytime we did teacher professional development throughout the life of this grant, we always asked the teachers to go public, to create a legacy cycle type lesson plan that they could share with their fellow teachers. And that's the way we designed all the STEM modules. So one way to roll out resources is to, again, kind of provide things that come to you. And so we were inspired as one of the outcomes that we wanted to see happen to create this thing called a STEMmobile, and to be able to take resources to the classrooms in these rural communities. Things like microscopes and data acquisition devices and batteries and circuit measurement techniques and all the kinds of things that we heard teachers tell us, we'd love to have this. We'd love to put this in the hands of our kids. And we thought, all right, let's put it into a box and let's put the box on the road. And so you can see the routing that we're talking about here, this part of the Upper Cumberland of Tennessee, 7,500 square miles. You want to identify your road systems. You want to make sure that the trailer, whatever it is going to be able to get where it needs to go. And think about the history of your region. So this image actually comes from a Tennessee Valley Authority historian had located this image, and I thought it was just really appropriate. It's an early STEMmobile. Think about the bookmobiles and the way they service the regions that we all care about. So this is the 21st century version. of a bookmobile. It's knowledge at the fingertips of children, guided by the adults that work with them and care about them. And so what you see here is some images on the inside. All the details of this STEMmobile initiative can be found in that paper that I mentioned, and you can certainly contact me if you're curious about learning more about the technology side of it. But of course, as anything goes, when you put a new program into place, you have to know how is it working. You have to be able to show people. So from day one, you always need to be thinking about what kind of data can you easily collect? Can teachers be a part of helping you provide? So one of the things that we did with the STEMmobile and continue to do today in its 5th year of routing is to collect pre-post information with the students. So quick surveys, and of course we've tried it by doing app surveys on an iPad. We'd quickly discovered kids get too distracted by all the cool things of the iPad and don't really want to answer the questions. So strangely enough, even in the 21st century, we're still doing paper pencil quick survey work. And what you see here on the next 3 slides is just some very initial glimpses of the data that we have coming to us now. These are examples of pre-post average scores amongst a group of students. And from the first year of routing in 2013-14, we were able to create 1,000 matched pairs of data looking across the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade activities. We have the same types of things for the younger. When we think about pre-test and post-test scores, sometimes a histogram like this says a story that people at your Chamber of Commerce can get behind. So you got to think about how you're going to tell your story with your data. From the ecosystem point of view, the STEMmobile is just a piece of the whole story. So one of the things that we constantly want to engage the public with is this idea of career pathways. And so here in the Upper Cumberland, one of the things we did was to also engage the public by saying, will you help us make a video? And so those became part of the multiple perspectives and those STEM modules of learning that kids had access to. The other way to think about your public engagement is all of the working professionals that are in your community do want to be engaged, but they may just not remember or know how to talk to the age group of kids. So thinking about training programs for the STEM volunteers themselves, people that you would have in the classrooms. How to build capacity for the teachers themselves. So in our work, we actually are constantly trying to help teachers become better grant writers and give them opportunities to bring resources into their classroom. One of the kind of thinking forward aspects, and I guess I just encourage you as I wrap this up here, is to become aware of what else is going on in your community. So for us in the Upper Cumberland, we became part of a program called Pathways to Prosperity. And that is very much of a workforce-driven concept, which is to constantly be thinking about how do parents, how do community members, how do youth themselves know about the jobs that are available to them, and how can that impact the learning that they're doing in the classroom. And so Pathways to Prosperity is an initiative that is national. You could find it in your area and find out whether or not it's something that you could become a part of. So for us here in the Upper Cumberland, STEM education is all about constantly leveraging the other initiatives, and these are just some examples. And as we think about what's next, it's becoming aware of data that you might not normally pay attention to, such as that labor market data. Understanding what are the new pathways that might be emerging. We talked about health sciences and IT. With information technology advances, the geographical regions aren't as isolated anymore. So thinking about how we can use IT to help meet those needs and connect educators across this process of STEM education. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up and turn us over to a Q&A time.